I'm really asking you, it's more than a process question. It's an integrity of the election question, and everybody's asking me this question, so I'm giving you an opportunity to explain it.
Sean, the only people asking this question are the hardcore Donald Trump supporters.
Why do you do this every single time No, you got to stop. Every time I have you on the air and I ask a legitimate question, you try to throw this in my face. I'm getting sick of it.
I always found Sean to be a nice guy. You know, very congenial, gets a lot out of his guests. But didn't he seem god-awful rude there? Anyway, I'm kidding. But Sean Hannity joins me from his radio studios. You know, he's a big multimedia star. You know, so getting him is like booking
Why do you start on me like...
Yes.
Why do you start in on me? The background of this, Neil, is really interesting because the last 3 interviews, for whatever reason, I feel like I've been fair to Ted Cruz. He's been had much more time on my radio show than anybody else. He certainly has been on TV more than any other candidate. And he didn't like the question, and the last 3 times he says, oh, that's a Donald Trump question. I'm like, no, it's not.
But how did you get into it? You were talking about the delegate thing and the controversy that's been raised about it. How did it start?
Well, I asked the question about, okay, how does this work? We read everything that happened over the weekend, for example, in Georgia, where some of the delegates that are committed to Trump were being courted by Cruz people so that if there is a second ballot, if there's a contested convention, that at that point that they would then switch to Ted Cruz. By the way, all legitimate, all within the rules, but I wanted to understand. I wanted him to explain. Now, I had Reince Priebus just moments ago on my radio show, and this is pretty interesting. I don't think a lot of people know this. In the courting of delegates, you can offer them airfare to the convention. You could pay for their hotel room at the convention. You can buy them expensive steak dinners at the convention. And I asked him, I said, well, doesn't that sound like you could possibly bribe somebody? So I think these are questions that are relevant. People want to know. There should be transparency if, in fact, we get to a contested convention.
But you know what I read there in his response? That it's pressures, you know, and you talk to all these candidates and throughout the process. They can feel the heat and they can blow up at the questioner. And I'm sure that rap that he is somehow part of a rigged process, that it could be gaining some popular traction. And then, lo and behold, Sean Hannity comes along, asks the same question, legitimate question, and he just fires away. How do you deal with that? And then how do you deal with then both camps who might just say, well, Hannity favors Trump or Hannity favors Cruz? I've seen and heard your interviews with Trump where you'll ask some very edgy questions. But you know what it's like on our respective shows. Whatever you say, their backers will say, aha, you're not a Trump guy, or you're not a Cruz guy, or you are a Cruz guy. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you then turn that?
Listen, you know the very big difference here is I don't hide the fact that I'm a conservative. At the end of the day, if you want to know where I stand, I'm a never Hillary guy. I don't want Hillary to be president.
Wait a minute. Whoa. I think I got a Fox alert here.
Breaking news.
You're not a Hillary guy. Well,
I'm not a Hillary guy.
It's all coming together, Hannity. Go ahead.
Look, I got a 1,000-page of op research ready to go on her when the time comes. But here's the interesting thing. So all these people in the media, when I let these candidates talk, and I really have given them free rein, because I think in the debates, for example, it's a little nuts to say, okay, you have 1 minute. Tell us how you're going to defeat ISIS. Those problems are a lot more complicated.
We gave them 1 minute 15 seconds. We gave them 1 minute 15 seconds on Fox Business, young man. There's a little different standard, but go ahead.
Listen, I wrote you.
No, I'm kidding.
So I want to give them the time to explain how they would solve the problems with the economy, how they're going to balance the budget, what are we going to do about a broken school system, a broken immigration system, Obamacare falling of its own weight. So I've given them the time to answer, and I've done it to all of the candidates going back to the point we had 17. Now, the media will criticize me, but they're the same people back in 2007 and 2008. And they say they're objective. They're supposed to be fair and balanced. I'm saying I'm a conservative. I want Hillary to lose. They never asked Obama. He was asked one time about his association and friendship and starting his political career in the home of an unrepentant terrorist, Bill Ayers. And the only reason that question was asked one time is because George Stephanopoulos was right here on this radio show the day before, and I fed him the question. So you know, it's kind of.
But you can't win, right? And I said this to you, and I said it on this show and on my Fox Business show, that when people are complaining about these interviews that you do, or saying, I said, well, what would you ask? So, well, if Trump is on, I'd like to talk about his language. And I go, Sean did. What else would you ask? Well, we'd like to get into his business background. Yep. Well, Sean did. So my point is that I think if anyone watches the full interview, they go into it thinking, all right, it's going to be this, and it's not. So you get and elicit a great deal of news, but I think that's the way the media works. But having said that, then now the question that has arisen since the Cruz stuff is whether now, A, you have him back, B, whether his folks or he directly are very mad at you and won't come back, and then what do you do?
I have Neil, we've worked together now 20 years. I think both of us have developed a lot of calluses over these years. I have a pretty thick skin. I don't get offended by words. It was one moment. We've had a lot of good interviews together. The nominee of the Republican Party is going to be either Donald Trump, who has the advantage right now by about 300 delegates, or it's going to be Ted Cruz at a contested convention. Whoever that person is, I'm going to support. I'll do it with all my heart and soul. I think the last 8 years for the economy and foreign policy, America's position in the world, we have been in a great state of decline. I would like to reverse that.
And what do you think, though, Sean, of fellow conservatives who don't agree with that process? They say if it's Trump, no way in heck they can do it. There are a lot of party luminaries who are skipping out of the convention. They're not going to go to it at all. Jeb Bush among them, John McCain, could be others since we've talked. What do you think of that?
You know, in some cases, it's the very same people that turn this into an insurgency year. You know, the reason that you have the success of Donald Trump, an outsider with no political experience but a successful business background, the reason that Ted Cruz, who's hated by the establishment and filibustered against the establishment, is because they didn't keep their promises. They didn't fight to repeal and replace Obamacare and use the constitutional authority of the press. They ran in 2014 on stopping executive amnesty. And in that particular case, they ended up funding executive amnesty. So the very people that might walk away are the very people that created the insurgency year to begin with. But the bottom line is this. Right now, we have 95 million Americans that are out of the labor force. You follow these numbers closer than anybody. 50 million Americans in poverty, 46 million Americans on food stamps. We now have 20 trillion in debt, 120 trillion in unfunded liabilities. This country is becoming Europe. We are in a state of decline. Unless dramatic steps are taken in a fairly expeditious manner, then America's going to continue on that path of decline, and I don't want to see that happen. I love this country. I want the Republican Party to create those bold differences that Reagan talked about, make the promise, fulfill the promise, and then watch America transition back to a successful economy.
And you think either Cruz or Trump, maybe by case it could do that. In other words, if we go to multiple ballots with this thing, and it's just those two guys, Cruz and Trump, right. The argument is if Trump doesn't do it at first ballot, he's not going to get it. Do you agree with that? I
don't think we're going to get there. That's my opinion.
And you think Trump will have enough delegates going in?
I think there are things happening behind the scenes that nobody knows about.
You can whisper it right now if you want. Go ahead and whisper. We'll pretend the microphones aren't on.
Well, you sound like Connie Chung. You sound like Connie Chung with Newt Gingrich's wife years ago. Just between you and us and 15 million people.
That's exactly right.
No, but look, I think what you're going to see, and I don't know what the partnerships will be, but certainly Marco Rubio is going to play a part here. Certainly John Kasich's going to play a part here.
Right.
So I think you might see alliances emerging before we ever get to a convention.
Interesting.
I think it would be smart because here's my take. If Republicans don't unite, those that are never Trump, those that are never Cruz, if they don't get off their high horse, all they're doing is helping to elect Hillary, and I don't want to see that happen.
Well, that was the newsmaker for me. You don't flip over Hillary. All right, Sean, good luck coming out of your shell. It seems to be working. Keep it up.
All right.
Sean Hannity.
I'm doing okay.
He's doing okay. Right? And, you know, I tell you, I defy anyone. Just listen to the full interviews Lee does. I mean, what are you moaning about? He asks these questions. If you don't like him, that's fine. If you don't like the guy he's talking to, fine. But listen.